Oi, oi, right, right. How's it going? I'm Grant. You're you coming through with the last of our honourable mentions list before we drop the big top 50 albums of the year list today. We're focusing on jazz, electronic, and ambient material. These are 10 records that I really enjoyed this year, but just didn't quite make the top 50. Before we get into it, if you're looking to try any of these artists, I've got playlists for you on Spotify. They're saved in the description. There's a playlist for each of these honorable mentions lists that I've done, as well as my quarterly playlists, and there'll be one for the top 50 list too. All right, without further ado, let's crack on. There were two Ty Seagull releases this year, which is not unusual. But if you'd have asked me at the start of 2024 which one would probably feature in my end of year list, either the classic garage psych record or the freeform jazz album exploring themes of love through percussive instruments only, like drums, bongos, and timpani, well, I probably would have said the garage psych one. But turns out I enjoyed this way more than Three Bells, his psych album. There are four long form tracks here on Love Rudiments. All of them, as I said, are drum or percussion focused, no vocals, completely free form. My favorite is probably the closing and title track, Love Rudiments, which it's just got this very hypnotic krautrock vibe to it, and I love the ascending and descending percussive melodies against the drums. This is a really cool experimental release. I recommend trying it if that sounds like your thing. Kahil El-Zabar is a multi-instrumentalist and band leader who helms the legendary Ethnic Heritage Ensemble, a project that gets its distinct sound from El-Zabar, who sets the tempo and the rhythm mostly with drums that are struck by the hand, so djembes, bowl drums, udus, and things like that. Immediately, this creates a very close, connected feeling to the music, and it somehow feels more present and organic due to this more kind of like intimate rhythmic style. There are 12 songs here, providing a total of an hour and 20 minutes worth of music. Among the tracks are some covers, pieces by Miles Davis, Gene McDaniels, McCoy Tyner. And there's also reinterpretations of existing Kahil El-Zabar tracks, as well as some originals. Of those originals, the concluding piece, Open Me, is a firm favorite. It sums up what I've discovered and since come to love about El-Zabar's compositions. The handmade percussion and those deep vocals just feel so earthy, so organic. It really casts a spell on you. The piece has this hypnotic, slow-paced, descending melody driven by the baritone sax, and that's embellished with trumpet, flute, and clarinet. I really enjoy the subtlety of the vocal as it aids in this poignant feeling of the collective musical experience rather than one that's kind of led by a single player. The record, is a bit of a marathon and can feel quite overwhelming at points, but overall, it's a pretty transportive experience, which was a fascinating introduction for me into the whole world of Kahil El-Zabar and the unique approach to the jazz ensemble. Check it out. This is a collection from the trio of channel favourite Sam Wilkes on bass, who's now partnering with Craig Weinrib on drums, Dylan Day and on the guitar. The album follows the standard format for many jazz releases, which is that these guys basically got together in one night to perform and record, and this LP is what came at the end of that. There are several moments dotted over the collection where you can hear one of the three kind of ad-libbing or encouraging the rest to push things into the next section, which I always think is really cool. This album is classically smooth, as most Sam Wilkes affiliated records are, but what gives things the little twist is the use of slide guitar from Dylan Day, the tone of which gives these jazz expressions a bit of a slight bluegrass tinge, which feels really unique. Out of jazz now and moving into the world of score, and of course, being a long-time Nine Inch Nails fan, I had to give some recognition to the boys, Reznor and Ross. This duo, they're incredibly prolific with their soundtrack work, and annoyingly so, because I'd love it if they could, just sit down and get to a new Nin album at some point. But anyway, I mentioned before on this channel that what I think is interesting is how they seem to kind of jump back and forth between material that fits their kind of standard house style and then a new score that feels quite out there and quite different. Challengers this year is absolutely that. The movie follows the drama and tension between three tennis players, two of which are old friends all the way back to their kind of male boarding school days. And the third is Zendaya playing a female tennis pro and the object of their desires. The film plays with the tension between all parties who have an infatuation with each other, which goes in all three directions. As such, the techno and trance pulse that Reznor and Ross deliver through the score really kind of underlines the sexual tension and in some respects the kind of homoeroticism of the movie. It's camp and almost over the top at points. In all honesty, I came to the movie quite late, and by that point I'd heard the score a bunch but also read all the think pieces, and when I came to actually watching it, I wasn't sure how well the score that is worked. It almost felt kind of cliche by the time I saw it. But that being said, the music itself is a lot of fun. I'm always game to hear this pair do something a bit more upbeat. And while those on the outside of the Nails fan base might not see it, there's always been a dance-infused club element to the works of Reznor that threatens to kind of rear its head from amidst the arpeggiated synths. And this is the answer to the request of many a fan that's wanted him to just make some dark club beats for quite a while. Sticking within the dance and electronic world, we have the latest LP from Forte. After a bunch of side quests with his mate Fred again and Skrillex, this is a fantastic mix of Kieran Hebden's ambient, down-tempo and sample chopping electronica that introduces occasional dashes of his higher energy houseworks here and there. The magic for me is that it never lingers on any one mode for too long, making it very accessible compared to a deeper dive into ambient such as a record like Parallel. It doesn't linger anywhere for too long, but still takes you on enough of a journey that you feel you've experienced something. Roughly half, if not more than half of the tracks end up in a much different kind of destination than where they start, and the ones that don't either meditate on a sound or tone that you generally want to hear drawn out, or explore many variations of that initial sound to keep you just as interested. Overall, this album is a pretty perfect encapsulation of Fortet's cerebral side packaged in a 45-minute record that provides not just depth but great pace too. Here we arrive in the more kind of electronic and ambient zone with this unlikely collaboration between UK producer Wonderkind James Blake and Atlanta auto-tune crooner rapper Lil Yachty. While existing in completely different worlds, Blake and Yachty have always shared a unique sense of digitally drenched melody, and of late have both been pushing themselves into new and unexpected territory. Looking to continue their respective experimental approaches, the pair agreed to start in a space that neither artist had worked before, with Blake starting the ball off by sharing a number of ambient demos he'd been working on. Yachty brings energy to these pieces, even if in a more soulful and relaxed sort of vibe for this project, and that pushes the production to more eventful places than what most ambient music is known for. But Yachty's melodic capability sits so well with Blake's that it just works. You feel like you're witnessing both artists' sensibilities play off each other in real time, and I think for me that is probably the most clear summary of the joy of this record overall. Two different but complementary artists pushing and pulling the songs between their respective styles. Overall, this is a surprising collaboration that when you break it down isn't all that surprising, but it's super gratifying to see these two similar but different artists kind of play off of each other. Occasionally, the wrong choice to pull back or lean in produces some shakier moments, but at its best, Bad Cameo has produced some of my favorite electronic music of the year. This is a collaborative album also between saxophonist Sam Gendel and guitarist Fabiano de Nascimento, which is utterly spellbinding. I first discovered Sam Gendel a couple years back with his tremendous album Superstore, a record in which Gendel's incredibly unique effects-drenched approach to the saxophone is explored from almost every possible angle. Fabiano de Nascimento is a Brazilian composer, producer, and shit-hot guitarist who often performs on 7, 8, or even 10-string nylon guitars, and he plays them like he's got about 20 fingers. It's insane. My favorite aspect of this short but engaging record is that the album allows for the full spectrum of play from both of these artists. There are tracks where both are just going off, Then others where Gendel maybe plays a supporting role to Nascimento, and vice versa. Others where Nascimento allows Gendel to kind of take the lead. And it makes for an album that feels like you're really getting to hear both artists at their best, while also never feeling like a bombardment of non-stop wankery. Patrick Shiroishi is an ambient freeform composer who has been involved in some of my favorite jazz and experimental albums over the last few years. His work ranges from the wow, I'm going to never listen to that again, to misty-eyed listening experiences of pure warmth and joy. Glass House is one definitely more in that second category. There are 4 tracks over 30 minutes that really take their time in setting a scene, combining electronics, found sounds, and saxophone. The first track, Memories, almost take you on a walk, ending up at some like babbling brook, where Shiroishi's sax begins kind of like swirling around you. My favorite is the track What I Do Next, makes no sense at all. An upbeat piece with a really fun bass line that's backed by these staccato strings that crescendo into icy arpeggiated synths. Shiroishi is one of my favorite contemporary experimental and ambient artists, and this has gone right up towards the top of his work for me. Keeping in the world of Shiroishi, the number 2 spot is the return of one of my favorite projects of his, Fuubutsushi, which brings together Shiroishi, Chris Jussel, Chaz Primek, and Matthew Sage. The quartet over lockdown released albums on a seasonal basis throughout the pandemic, one of which, Setsu Bum, was my number 10 in my top 50 of 2021 list. I recommend it. The group create a combination of ambient, jazz, and field recordings so well, and after not kind of hearing them after the pandemic had finished, I figured that might have been it, until earlier this year they dropped this, an opus. It covers all the ambient magic I loved about their first set of albums, but also innovates to deliver different sounds for the group. Tracks like Spent for Light, for instance, has an intensity we've not heard before from these guys, and it's completely captivating and rewarding. They build these synths with almost a slight dark edge, and it provides a counterbalance to the rest of the record, which is so, warm and peaceful. And number 1 is, of course, the master that is Kamasi Washington and his latest Odyssey, Fearless Movement. I have to say, compared to records like The Epic, Heaven and Earth, or even the mini one, Harmony of Difference, I was a little disappointed in this one, if only for the fact that we spend so much of the album on vocal tracks that are distracting and lyrically cover some pretty rote topics. Nonetheless, the saxophonist himself is undeniably incredible. Washington is always the star, and even if, as a band leader, and makes some of the tunes I'm even inclined to criticize because of their vocals a compelling listen. In fact, one of my highlights is the track Computer Love, where after passages of vocoder and synths, Washington's sax just takes over, and it's like, oh my god, yes, Daddy is here, taking the melody and pulling into new, exciting and organic territory. Favorite tracks include the masterful Road to Self, where among other moments of brilliance, there is delay applied to the scale runs, creating an element of like psychedelia, which also produces yet more movement and blurs the edges of this widescreen picture of sound. Overall, while the vocals can get a little exhausting, there are some moments that, maybe conceptually make sense, but do feel a little on the nose. This is another pretty damn exceptional hour and a half of the most enveloping, operatic, transcendent jazz music around in the modern age. There we go. That's my top 10 honorable mentions in the field of jazz. Many of these releases I've already published full deep dive videos on, so I've linked those below for you to check out if you're interested. And don't forget the playlist too, which is also linked down there. So it's a really easy way to try out some of these releases if you've not heard of any of the artists, and stick around for the top 50 albums of 2024, which is on its way. Take care. I know you go. Cheers, mate. Bye.